From Public Radio.
Preventing truth decay.
Harrison's reality check.
Cary Harrison here.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
All while ferreting out the bottom line.
Harrison's reality check.
And it is the top of the hour. Cary Harris with you, your new best friend. You can follow us, of course, anytime at Go Harrison, one word, at Go Harrison. You can also go to goharrison.com, where you will see a copy of this as we are live broadcasting on the radio, video streaming later today. Or, if we're lucky, I believe this is also on our KPFK Facebook page as a live video stream. We're going to talk today about, well, let's just say it's going to be topical. Don't you love that? Like talking about things that are actually going on in the world? Yep, it's true. And I want to talk a bit about Ukraine, not because you care, not because you don't care, not because you're like, oh my God, that's still happening. Well, what's happening as a result of it is happening to you. You're paying how much for milk, for gasoline in LA? What is it now? $7? Unless you go to Beverly Hills and it's nearly $8 a gallon. And I don't know what you drive, but if it's not an electric car, you probably burn more than a gallon a week. And everything else is costing you a great deal. Well, there's a plan in play. And Ukraine is not that Vladimir Putin decided simply to reboot the Soviet Union, because that is exactly what he's doing. But he is a very, very crafty guy. And what he's doing is setting up a series of dominoes that are falling. The Cold War, which many people grew up living, some people like I'm sitting next to me right now, a guy named Ken, 22 years old. The Cold War, yes, when you were a pupa, when you were a zygote, it was real. Nuclear missiles about to fall. So he's actually watching this going, what do you people think? Well, we're going to talk about what we people think. The Cold War, where it was effectively real possibility of thermonuclear weapons dropping. There were how many upses on both the Russian side and our side? Yeah, it almost happened many, many times. Submarines sank with live nuclear weapons falling onto the ocean floor, still there, by the way. We had a bunch of misfires, all the above ground nuclear testing, all done in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, all done. All that nuclear fallout spreading like a beautiful thin patina over the entire planet of Earth and raining down on all of our crops and vegetables, not to mention what we saw happen with Chernobyl when they did measure radioactive global fallout. It went as far as Scotland. It was in Sweden when 3 Mile Island went down in Pennsylvania back in the 1970s. I say it that way because Ken, who's 22, is like, 1970? Yep. Back then. We colored TV. A lot of people had it by then. Back then, when it rained after 3 Mile Island, it threw a lot of radiolytic particles into the soil. And of course, it's Hershey, Pennsylvania. Hershey, I've heard that name before. They make chocolate. That's what it is. So guess what's in the national chocolate base? Whether it's Kisses, whether it's candy bars. And that radioactive material goes into the soil. It sits there forever and ever. Amen. With a half-life of 500,000 years. And all those cows gnaw on that grass, suck it up, put it in their organs, spew it out through their milk, and it's chocolate for days. And this country, what is it? With women, 1 in 8 has breast cancer. I think it's now down to 1 in 7. We have autism off the scales. We have every friggin' disease. And if you're male, you're going to die of prostate cancer. Sorry. It's just what all males get. Ken, you're 22. Are you going to get prostate cancer? Have you been told that you're going to get it someday? Your grandpa got it. Okay. There we go. So this is sort of the life we live. Let's flash forward to Ukraine. And I'll be introducing our guest shortly, probably in the next 5, 6, 7 minutes. This guy is a serious powerhouse. If you want to know where it was, where it is now, and where it's going, And the reason is not for some intellectual thrill ride, some mental cognitive masturbation so that you can tut-tut while you're drinking wine at a good restaurant with someone. This is for your survival. You need to know why it's happening that way and where it heads so that you can make, adult decisions. Like, should I sell all my stock tomorrow? Oh my God, I've never seen anything like it. Inflation highest in 80 years. This, that, and the other. What do I actually do? So that's why it helps to have guys who are involved in the infrastructure of the country and of global politics to reveal a bit of what's going on. Back to Putin, one of my favorite topics, let me tell you. So one of the side effects of what he's doing in Ukraine, he could go in and whack Ukraine in 2 minutes. Boom, done. There it is, done. But he's not. He's torturing it slowly but surely. And here's the genius of it, if you can find any genius in military actions. A lot of you can't. No matter what it is, it just makes you want to puke. I'm kind of there with you. But there's it's like playing chess. We don't throw up watching somebody win. It's just, as George W. Bush would say, strategery. So here's the genius in that strategery. What Vladimir Putin and the Russians are doing, they're wearing down Ukraine. Ukraine is one of 3 places on the planet where you can grow anything all year round, pretty much. You can grow 4 different crops simultaneously. The other 2 places are California. Hooray for California. And then the other one is Chile. So when you're slowly eroding Ukraine, what happens? Well, as the Russians go in and destroy everything, they also destroy the crop. They destroy the infrastructure. When the Ukrainians leave, they destroy the crops so the Russians can't take them. You end up with a pretty flatline joint. When it does recover, the next giant Marshall Plan, and we will be talking to our guest in a moment to get better clarity on this, as opposed to my raw, unbridled speculation. When we do have a next major Marshall Plan to rebuild Ukraine, it's going to be very expensive. And by then, the Europeans will have no choice but to pay enormous amounts of money for their food. Oil at $150 a barrel by then. It's going to be out of control. But guess what? Everyone is painted into a corner. There is no way out. What's happening right now, south of us, right here, right now? Well, we had Mexico uninvite, disinvite, de-invite, not show up to the big hootenanny in Los Angeles, where the Latin American countries got together, and we're talking about what does that future look like. Uninvited by the United States, Cuba, Venezuela, and Mexico said, if they don't come, we don't come. Well, what's going on in Mexico? AMLO, the president, Obrador. He hired a guy who was here in the United States doing sort of QAnon level stuff, pretty way out there, a perfect guy for AMLO to hire. He hired this guy, took $70 million out of the federal budget in Mexico, and has paid this guy as a former Russian spook analyst and propagandist to explain why the president of Mexico is a god and he needs to stay in office forever and ever, kind of like Putin, whose 6-year term turned into 36 years. And you can do that by changing your constitution. They're done. Look away, kids. Nothing to see here. Move along. And so this guy is hell-bent on staying. And what is, if you Google Russian spies in Mexico, I know, why would you Google Russian spies in Mexico? Google it right now. You're going to see ABC News. You're going to see the Wall Street Journal. You're going to see all kinds of mainstream newspapers and U.S. generals saying that the largest amount of Russian spies in history are sitting in Mexico right now. What's the end game? The end game, while we're busy dicking around and staring at Ukraine and, oh my God, how terrible, they are doing a big kumbaya and suturing together all the Latin American countries. Why? What's there? What could you possibly want in Mexico? Well, Mexico has a lot of precious metals, but places like Venezuela have all that natural gas. They have untapped oil reserves, enough to just paint the skies, not with flowers, but with just billowing black smoke. You've got the Amazon. You've got the world's supply of air and water all the way down to the South Pole. And if you can bring that all together, as they tried some years ago, before Maduro took over in Venezuela, back when it was, well, who can forget when New Orleans happened after Hurricane Katrina and Venezuela offered free gasoline. So that's really what's going on south of us. And they intend to buttress our southern border and have a sort of an EU, if you will, of Latin American states. Not a lot of freedom, Russians being primary players. And I only know that because I actually had access to this spook who's down there right now, causing a lot of pain while we're staring mostly at Ukraine. That's not to say we don't know. It's just we don't talk about it, or at least our mainstream media doesn't talk about it. They may not know. They're much better at talking about the Kardashians. You and I both know that. That's why we're here today. So without wasting another minute, I don't consider that a waste, but when you have a guest, they consider it a waste when they're sitting there staring, blinking, going, well, I'm scheduled. So today is a fundraiser for KPFK. I'm asking for your support. Why? Because we're going to provide you that which you will not hear anywhere else. We're going to bring on people, big-brained people, brave people, to tell you what's really going on. You will not hear anywhere else. They may occasionally pop on the big TV set, but then they're usually not invited back because, well, they say stuff that's kind of icky and it doesn't go along with the mainstream thinking. That's why we look for the grown-ups. So today, I'm going to bring you right now Dr. Harlan Ullman. Who is this guy? Why would we bring him on? Well, just what I was saying earlier and more. The January 6th hearings, if you caught night number 1 the other night, you will have watched what, well, I think most of us had hoped for a spectacular, unbelievable piece of Disney-level magic. I mean, this was not like a real congressional hearing. It was an advertisement to get the Justice Department fired up and sparked up. So I was expecting music beds and special effects and graphics and, like a documentary, like good. And in fact, it left me a bit flaccid. But what are you going to do? So we're going to talk about that and more, and where it is all going with Dr. Harlan Ullman, former advisor to the Pentagon, foreign relations expert, and author of the new book, The Fifth Horseman, and the new MAD. MAD is capital M-A-D. How massive attacks became the looming existential danger to a divided nation and the world at large. I like to compress whole sentences into single words. So if you don't understand me, I don't understand me either. I will have the courtesy of repeating it only once. Let me give out the phone numbers, by the way. Just you can go to kpfk.org, make a donation, support this radio station, support this show, Reality Check, simply by calling 818-985-5735, 818-985-5735, because we're going to make this book available to you, plus a webinar with Dr. Ullman. So here we are, Dr. Ullman. I have just given you one of the loftiest encomiums and long tarmacs on which to idle your plane. I am very glad you're here with us today.
Cary, that was terrific. I'm shocked and awed by what you have just done. And as the author of Shock and Awe, you should take that as a compliment.
Well, let's jump.
Yes. The Fifth Horseman and the New MAD, how massive attacks of disruption became the looming existential danger to a divided nation and the world at large. And let me just take you through the first couple pages of the book. In the frontispiece, I have 5 quotations. The first one comes, and I'm not going to repeat 5, just 2 will do. The first comes from the most trenchant line in the Declaration of Independence. When government becomes destructive, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and establish a new one. The second comes from Lincoln in 1858. A house divided upon itself cannot stand. We go to the preface, which is written with shock and awe, which takes place on January 20th, 2029, when the 48th President of the United States, a woman, Anne Jackson Bennett, is being sworn in, not at the Capitol, but in a concrete iceberg in an undisclosed location, which is the new White House, because both the White House and the Congress were destroyed by drones in 2027. And to show a dystopian future in which Vladimir Putin is celebrating his 77th birthday in Kyiv, and President Xi of China celebrating his birthday in Taiwan. And the situation gets worse from there. The point is, well, people say that cannot happen. On January 1st, 2020, nobody anticipated COVID, in which more people have died than were killed in every battle the United States has fought since 1775. And nobody anticipated that the death of a black man at the knee of a policeman in Minneapolis would cause nationwide riots and reverberations. So it can happen here. Will it? I don't know. But unless we understand that we're dealing with massive attacks of disruption, the foremost and most dangerous is failed and failing government. Our Constitution and our republic are under assault. We can fix it if we understand that and take some of the recommendations I make. But if we don't, I will guarantee you two things. Standards of living will decline for virtually every American, and the idea of an American dream will be lost almost forever. Will this be 1861? No, but it's not going to be a good time unless we wake up and say, all right, we got some problems here, but we can fix them. That's the theme and substance of the book, and I hope people will read it and take it for action.
Thank you. We're talking right now to Dr. Harlan Ullman. This is a fictional account, by the way, although it could be an unfortunate painting of the future, just like when George Orwell wrote 1984 and 1948. Did he actually think he was writing the manual? Partially, maybe. If he were still alive, would he be pleased that it turned out that way? Totally not. But, you know, it's interesting. We watch Star Trek, and listen, anytime you can mention Star Trek, you're having a good day, I think. And we watch the original series, and we see tricorders, which exist today in another form. We see the medical bed where you just lay down, and there, all your statistics are right above you. All of this stuff from the 1960s is now totally normal today. And this is what fiction writers imagined what it could look like. It just isn't there yet. So this is why these books are prescient. This is why they augur a dystopian future, which could happen. Who knew a year ago that we would be, you know, having a brisk skirmish with the Russians? I don't even know what the hell you call it, but it is real and it's not going away, and it has thrown us in a tail loop. And you mentioned, Dr. Harlan Ullman, you use the word disruption. And I think that's a very important word because we hear it in technology a lot. People who don't follow tech don't know what you mean by being a disruptor. They recall being in third grade, being a disruptor and getting a ruler across the fanny. That is not what you're talking about.
Well, and in those days, if that happened today, the teacher would be in jail for 20 years for striking a minor. Look, disruptions can be positive. We had the Industrial Revolution. We had the American Revolution. We've had the Information Revolution. So it depends how you use them. But these disruptions, take, for example, climate change. Some people deny it. They're wrong. The question is, how bad will it be? Look at America today. On the West Coast, you're going to go to jail for watering your lawn, but you can't go into Yosemite because it's flooded. You have these huge heat waves. I graduated from the Naval Academy in Annapolis. The Naval Academy is beside the Severn River. The Severn River is going to overflow its banks in 5 or 10 years. And unless something is done, the Naval Academy is going to become a permanent submarine school. Now, I cite this as anecdotal evidence, but this is what's happening. Pandemics will mutate. How ready are we for COVID 20, 21, 22? And my argument is, these are not impossible tasks if we use our imagination. These are resolvable. We have unbelievable technologies today. I compare 1918, 1920 Spanish flu to today to take a look at societies, how society was organized, how the Dow Jones was organized. And what was interesting was we didn't do much better today, even though we did have the breakthrough of vaccines than we did in 1918-20. But following 1918-20, the United States entered into the greatest economic boom in its history. Why? Now, it didn't end up so well because we didn't have any guardrails. Electricity was a technology. Most of the country lacked electricity. Henry Ford and Walter Chrysler made cars available provided you liked them in black. So all of these things led to the need for energy. It led to the need for roads and hospitalities. And we had new technologies in terms of airplanes, travel, and radio. Think about today what we have in genetics and biology and artificial information and machine learning. I mean, it's fabulous what we have. So the technology today is even more positively disruptive than it was then. But how do we harness it? And that's got to get back to a relationship between the private sector and the public sector. And one of the things I argue for is a national infrastructure investment fund, not the $1.2 trillion that Congress has appropriated, which is not enough and it doesn't have any oversight and probably is not going to work, but one that's funded by the equivalent of war bonds, in which you get 2% over prime, but will be overseen by a combination of civilians in the private sector and people in government. So like boards of directors of public companies, you have some real guidance there. And it's going to invest in technology and infrastructure across the board, not just roads and airports. What about medical infrastructure? What about learning and academic infrastructure? What about supply chain infrastructure? What about research and development infrastructure? All these things to put the country on a pursuit where in the 21st century you can become the most competitive country in the world. We can do that, but it requires vision, it requires courage, and we got to stand up and understand things are broken because both political parties are now supremely disrupted by most of the public and by each other. And what's happened, that Americans have lost any kind of confidence and reliability of their government. In 1964, before the Gulf of Tonkin resolution that got us into the war in Vietnam, over two
Which we should point out.
didn't occur,
Yeah.
75 to 80% of Americans trusted the government. They trusted the Boy Scouts. They trusted authority. How many Americans trust authority today? In single figures, double figures. That is a sign of the symptom. We have to reverse that. We cannot do it overnight, but you've got to understand where we are, why we're here, and what is the way out of this mess. That's what this book has done. And I think it's important because once we get this meaning, we can move forward. But right now, nobody agrees on objectivity. Nobody agrees on a truth or a fact. It's my opinion or what I read on the internet or saw on the internet. And that just leads to confusion and ignorance. And that in turn leads to violence and disruption, where one end of the Republican Party and one end of the Democratic Party refuse to talk to each other and regard each other as enemies. We don't want this to be 1861. America, are you listening?
Yes. And then there was the famous story of Rutherford B. Hayes.
Of course, 1876.
That's right. And that's a much longer conversation. We might even delve into it, but
well, I get into that in my book because of the 12th Amendment and because of the 1887 Electoral College Act. The Constitution is vulnerable. We have not fixed it. And the January 6 hearings are just showing how vulnerable we are if people just step back and listen. But my point is...
Let's jump into that. This is actually a perfect pivot point, but I'm going to reset the table because people come and go so quickly here, as Dorothy said in The Wizard of Oz, in their cars, that is, in 15-minute increments. We're talking right now to Dr. Harlan Ullman. He's an advisor to the most senior leaders in various governments and industries, served on a number of advisory boards, including NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, Europe, 2004 to 16, senior advisor at Washington, D.C.'s Atlantic Council, chairman of One Private Companies, principal author of The Doctrine of Shock and Awe and a Brains-Based Approach to Strategic Thinking, a former naval person commanding a destroyer in the Persian Gulf, and was decorated for leading over 150 combat missions and operations in Vietnam as a swift boat skipper, not a layabout, not a slubberdigullion. There's an old word that I do love to say once a year. We're talking about not only what it is, where it's going, and how it will turn out if we don't become awake and understand what's going on. Not storming the Bastille like January 6th. That's a symptom of the sickness. And I think you would agree with that, Dr. Ullman, that this is how the symptoms do. The boil lances itself, and it ends up being a big sloppy mess, and nothing is fixed. We just have a lot of goo.
Absolutely. And the trouble is, both parties have got to reform. Let me say this. I say this as a radical independent. I used to think that one party lost its mind and the other party lost its soul. I now believe both parties have lost their minds and their souls. And so the Democrats have got to reform to become the Democratic Party that it once was. And the Republican Party can no longer become the party of Trump. It's got to be the Republican Party that was strong on national defense, but still had a compassionate conservative view domestically. And the Democratic Party, you have to have blue dog Democrats who believe in strong defense, but also social programs. We've lost that. And in fact, you haven't mentioned Watergate, but if you go back to Watergate, Where are the Howard Bakers? Where are the Barry Goldwaters? Where are the John Sharikas? I mean, they just do not exist. Nobody stood up to Donald Trump in the Senate and said, Mr. Trump, you have got to go, as Barry Goldwater said to Richard Nixon. Those days are over. How we get back there is not going to be simple, but unless we can stand up for truth and fact and agree on what truth and fact is and the need to move this country forward with civility and compromise, as I said, our standards of living are going to decline dramatically, and America is not going to be the place it once was. And that will be a travesty and a tragedy in my mind.
So here's a call to action. We are lucky to have with us right now Dr. Harlan Ullman, advisor to the most senior leaders in various governments and industries, former advisor to Pentagon, foreign relations expert, author of the new book, The Fifth Horseman and the New MAD, capital M-A-D, Mutually Assured Destruction. How massive attacks, say again?
Massive attacks of disruption.
Yes, sorry about
that. The old MAD, and it's interesting, the old MAD, which I used purposely, mutual assured destruction during the Cold War, was that both sides would annihilate each other with thermonuclear weapons. And so therefore there was going to be no war. Nobody died under a mushroom-shaped cloud in the old MAD. At least 1 million Americans so far have died under the new MAD in terms of COVID.
Yes, very good point, and needlessly so. I often visit the state of Florida, and the governor there, DeSantis, has convinced the entire state, some 40-something million people, that masks and actually thinking about COVID, mentioning it, is somehow akin to the slippery slope of communism. And it flies in the face of medical reality. But then if everyone dies, then there's nobody left to complain, and you must have been right. This is the kind of logic that you deal with in your book in this wonderful Huxleyan Orwellian vein. And if you want to understand where we all stand and where it could go in the dystopian way, and that's why we love our KPFK listeners. They're awake and alive. They care. They get into action. They pick up the phone. They write letters. They stay involved. They practice civics. You could get this book for a $150 pledge to support KPFK right now. Call 818-985-5735. Pick up the phone right here, right now. If you're watching the live stream on our Facebook page, you will see this incredibly beautiful colored jacket. Wow, blues and yellows and blacks. And it's called The Fifth Horseman and the New MAD. 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-KPFK, $150. Chump change. Why? Because we're adding something into it. We haven't picked a date yet, but we're going to let you know down the road. Dr. Ullman has just agreed to do a webinar for all of us. And he's going to lay out with a bit of a sort of a PowerPoint look, which you're going to let me know what that is, by the way. I'm not throwing that on you. Make it good. We're going to be able to show you how stuff works, why it works, how it's put together, and where it goes. This is the kind of school you were never given at university. You were never given it in high school. You were never given it in grade school. In fact, it would never, ever, ever be allowed on today's curriculum. Why? Because critical thought causes criticism, and we can't have none of that around here. Am I right?
Can I make 2 points that your listeners and viewers will... When I was a kid, polio was really, really rampant. Can you imagine any parent not wanting a child to have a Salk vaccine shot? Parents would kill for that. In 1947, one case of smallpox was detected in New York City. And in 60 days, 6.7 million New Yorkers were inoculated against smallpox. And now we can't even get agreement on COVID vaccine. And that tells you how America has changed. Another point I'm going to make, because I'm my view graphs, I'm my PowerPoint. This is it. You're looking at it. I was lucky enough
pointing at his chest
as a very young officer to be teaching at the National War College, which was our most prestigious war college. And all the students were much older than I was. One of them was a young rising lieutenant colonel, soon to be colonel, named Colin Powell. And what I said to my students was, I pushed them with a question. And this is something for your listeners and viewers to think about. And I posed them to this. We had all served in Vietnam, in which one thing was standard across all the services. Every bullet we fired, every bomb we dropped missed. I said, what happens in the next war when you shoot something and it hits on the first target, on the first shot? And everybody said, oh, I can't get my hand on it. This is just too provocative. And about 2 weeks later, Powell came back to me and said, you're right, this will change warfare. My point today is that massive attacks of disruption are the equivalent of precision fires that change the nature of war. If we understand massive attacks of disruption and what they can do and respond, we can change our society. And it's really that basic and that revolutionary.
Yeah, and to your point, Dr. Harlan Ullman, we have in Miami, again, down at the very bottom on the eastern seaboard, high tide means the sidewalks are now underwater.
Sure, of course.
And they haven't figured out a way to hoist the sidewalks. And it's a little late. They are now building lobbies of condos on the third floor, but by then, who wants to swim home with your Whole Foods? So these are tough problems. I have to ask you, you having been at the Naval War College, you having run 150 combat missions in Vietnam, having been in the advisor to the Pentagon, foreign relations expert, and multiple book author. This is number 10, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So you can read and write. So we like you even more.
And sometimes I can even think and speak, more important.
Yes. So why would the government purposely and knowingly, this would be under the previous administration when COVID came into its existence, why would it purposely tell you it's not there, it's move along, it's all BS, bring up Fauci, make him look like a stooge, et cetera, and then people are injecting Clorox up their bum, and everyone is dying and self-slaughtering because now the highest authority in the land has told them, just make out with homeless people. You'll be fine. Like, I don't get it.
Cary,
Speaking of Democrats, Republicans of the old school, it makes you pine for Mayor Daley of Chicago as a good Democrat or Richard Nixon as a great Republican. Like, give me that.
Cary, I'm now going to ruin your day. Vietnam, we're winning. 10,000 more troops. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. The government lied about the Gulf of Tonkin event. The government lied about what was happening in Vietnam. I actually met as a very young officer at the White House with Lyndon Johnson, 2 other officers, saying, how is the war going? This is 1967, June. And I told the president, I said, quote, we're getting the shit kicked out of us, quote, unquote. And it then turned into a pep rally, how the president and Robert McNamara was Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs were giving us a pep rally about how well the war was going. I said, in Iraq does not have weapons.
Let's watch our language here, if you don't mind.
Okay. Afghanistan. I argued in 2006, we're losing in Afghanistan. So it's not just Trump. And I agree with you that the way the Trump administration dealt with the PR of COVID was outrageous and derelict, even though they managed to get a vaccine, which was marvelous. But administrations lie. Administrations lie, and we do not hold them accountable. And a good part of my life was Vietnam. And in my professional life, Iraq the second time and Afghanistan were parts of what I was doing. And so this is not something that was just part of the Trump administration. And even Joe Biden, and I respect and like Joe, even though I think he's not doing a very good job, getting out of Afghanistan was derelict. And he knew better. Once you took out the contractors, there's no way the Afghan military and defense forces could work, period. And he was being told that. So this, unfortunately, is a function of weaknesses in presidents and our systems that truth and objectivity not always have a chance to play.
So here's a question, Dr. Harlan Ullman, and not that there is an answer, but I like asking questions, especially if there is no answer. How is it possible in a nation of, what are we now, about 350 million? We contain some of the brightest minds that have ever existed on Earth. There are people like Ken sitting next to me who's watching today at 22 years old, who has never lived without something called the internet, which means that he could just summon any piece of information at his fingertips whenever he felt like. When you grew up, when I grew up, even though I'm only 29, not so much, when I grew up, all of the world's knowledge was contained in something called the encyclopedia. And if it wasn't published in there, it wasn't worth knowing. So we actually had a very finite amount of information we could plumb. And because you have a military education, you have really an expansive global education. You understand Greek mythology, I mean, all of this cool stuff that is forbidden and not taught today. So here we have a country of geniuses that have given the internet to Earth, they're flying extraterrestrially for fun now on space flights. And the best we can conjure up for leadership are these knuckle-walking Hispidolites. And I think we just lost our guest here, did we? I guess we did. Okay. Well, he'll be back shortly. Sometimes this is the nature of the internet. Maybe I said something and he had to go away. Not on his own volition, by the way. Let me just reset. Cary Harrison here with you. This is Harrison's Reality Check. We're doing a pledge drive for KPFK, bringing on complicated big brain thinkers who are willing to tell you the truth about everything. Dr. Harlan Ullman, former advisor to the Pentagon, foreign relations expert, and author of the new book, The Fifth Horseman and the New Mad, How Massive Attacks Became the Looming Existential Danger to a Divided Nation and the World at Large, is here talking about how stuff works, the infrastructure, having been at the heart and soul of government. Whether it's the Pentagon, having run 150 missions in Vietnam, having been educated and trained and teaching at the Naval Center, which he told you one of his students had been Colin Powell, and talking about how both the Democrats and Republicans are seriously wanting. As an independent, which I am too, because that's what you have to be if you are talking about this stuff publicly. You really can't pick a side. You can have a flavor and a preference, but you have to kind of ride it down the middle. And he's talking about we could do better. And a lot of people have institutional memory of when it was better. It may not have been greatly better, but it was better. Hold on. That is our guest, Harlan. Is it not letting you back on? Of course, everyone is enjoying this conversation right now, but I'm going to ask, are you getting an error message? Is it not letting you log back in? Great. I'm going to hang up the phone here and we're going to get back to it. So here's the call to action. We're going to give you his book for $150 pledge, which is just chump change, breaks down to next to nothing for the entire month. It's a book you can pass on as knowledge. Pass it on to your friends. Pass it on to people you know are students that are never, ever, ever going to get this level of education from anyone in school, from any institution or anywhere. This is a book that is going to enlighten, that is going to teach them how to think. Critical thought of A and B affects C, which affects D, which affects E. And the next thing you know, you're going to know where L, M, N, O, P end up unrolling, because there is a natural rhythm to things. And if you destroy the plants in one place and you've got a group of population that need to eat those plants and you got to bring them in from the other side of the world, the price is 3 times more. It seems very simple, but we're not taught to think like this. It will explain why we're in a world of hurt with outrageous inflation. We're going to end up seeing another quantitative easing. It's the only thing they can do, because they certainly can't compress the economy, can't raise interest rates and price every single person out of the game and stall and kill the economy. So it's going to have to be more printing presses. We're going to see a lot of weird new stuff. If you want to understand how it's tethered together, you're going to pick up the phone right now. That's it right there. That's the phone. That one. Pick it up. You're going to punch in 818-985-5735. 818-985-KPFK. Did I mention it was 818-985-KPFK? You can also go to kpfk.org, kpfk.org, and at your leisure, like 12 seconds or so, that's enough leisure. Too much leisure, you'll forget. Go to kpfk.org, $150 pledge to Harrison's Reality Check. We are giving you The Fifth Horseman and the New Mad by Dr. Harlan Ullman. Plus, you're going to get a free ticket to our upcoming webinar where he's going to lay out all of this cool stuff that you're going to be able to watch. You'll have a book, which you can pass on to people. You can educate, inform, enlighten, put it in your bookshelf. It's a very cool cover. So it pops. When people walk by, they're going to look at you and go, "You read books?" And you're going to go, "Yep." And because that bad boy is going to poke out at you. And you'll get the webinar, which also comes with a transcript, so you can read that and share it with others. So it is an unbelievable value. And the idea is to get you from lingerie up to sporting goods. And that elevator keeps going up Willy Wonka style, right through the glass ceiling of ignorance. And if we can't do anything else for you, that's what we do here at KPFK. We open up doors of the mind. It is not happening on AM talk radio, of which I am an unfortunate client as well. It is not happening anywhere else. I can't talk like this on other. Are you kidding? But I can do it here on KPFK. I can bring on people like Dr. Harlan Ullman, former advisor to the Pentagon, foreign relations expert, author of this book, The Fifth Horseman and the New Mad, How Massive Attacks Became the Looming Existential Danger to a Divided Nation and a World at Large. As you pick up the phone right now, right here, and dial 818-985-5735. $150 pledge takes this station a long way. It gives you the knowledge, the depth and breadth of information. It gives you the toolbox at your disposal they can never take away. And that's insight. Once you have insight, you are ahead of the game. You're ahead of your neighbors. $150 pledge at 818-985-5735. Go to kpfk.org. kpfk.org and pick up this book. Get your webinar ticket, which we will, once we get your email, we will shoot you your invite for that. I will be there. And guess what? Dr. Harlan Ullman will be there because he's hosting it. So you could get to see him too. And as far as I know, we're also live streaming on Facebook right now. And of course, broadcasting on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles and environs, all the way down to the Mexican border, pounding all the way up past Santa Barbara and east all the way out to, I don't know, just cactuses everywhere and somebody with a transistor radio. So
To
hooray
water.
for us.
All the way to water.
Yeah, all the way there. Absolutely.
I'm gonna make a comment here that you
Yeah.
I can fix Congress overnight. All right.
Well, there's a
I can
challenge.
fix Congress overnight. Are you strapped in?
Yeah, I am actually. You can
You
tell.
gotta be.
And I have a helmet on because I'm a headbanger.
Before any member of Congress votes on a bill, he or she has got to affirm or swear that they have read and understood it.
Yes. So wouldn't that have been lovely when John Ashcroft brought us the Patriot Act?
Well, it would have been nice when you get a 3,000 or 4,000 page bill that's presented to you at 10 o'clock at night and you have to vote on it the next day. My point is, if you were CEO in a public company, you could go to jail for doing that because under Sarbanes-Oxley, you were required to verify that whatever you put out in a profit and loss sheet, or a balance sheet is accurate to the best of your knowledge. How can you then pass legislation in which you have no idea what's in it? Now, people will say, well, it's just too difficult. The laws are too nonsense. In 1973, when Don Rumsfeld was Secretary of Defense the first time, the Defense Authorization Act was 92 pages long. 92 pages. Why can't we go back to that? And we were fighting a war in Vietnam with several hundred thousand troops present.
So here's a question to drill more deeply into what you're saying. And I don't think there's a single person that doesn't think that's a great idea. Postpone the vote, read the damn bill, sign
Absolutely.
an attestation saying you read it word for word, and you are responsible for it because you read it and signed. Uh-oh. Different kind of voting, different kind of debate. So back then, my train of thought just derailed all over the tracks. There's kindling, there's smoke, never mind. But I love this idea. Can we compel these guys to do it? I mean, they'd have to pretty much want to do it to bring it up as a bill and vote on it. And that's not going to go very well, is it?
They compelled CEOs of public companies to do it. Absolutely. I mean, it's outrageous. Here's a 3,000 or 4,000 page bill that probably is going to worth $1 trillion totally, and you don't know what's in it, and you're supposed to be my representative? Come on.
So it
So I
seems
think
to
the
me
public
that,
has got to demand that there's got to be some way of dealing with this to discipline Congress. That's the deal. You've got to discipline Congress so they know what they're doing. Too often they pass stuff and they have no idea what's in it, and it becomes explosive. What was the thing they just passed by unanimous consent that was absolutely ludicrous the other day because nobody knew what was in the bill?
so it seems to me, giving a nod to Machiavelli, that you would have a 3,000-page report because it is actually impossible to read. When was the last time you picked up a 3,000-page book? Never.
Of course.
Yeah, impossible to read, and therefore it won't be read, and therefore you just go yes or no.
It's good. I'm going to do
It's
the
good.
book report without having read it, of course.
Yeah, and there aren't even really like capable cliff notes because the thing just got finished. So this is masterful deceit. And I think if it's presented to Congress as they're being deceived and hoodwinked, then they're going to have to defend their position. I mean, I'm just coming up with ways to help.
What you need is somebody like Will Rogers,
Yes.
100 years ago, nearly, who said every time Congress passes a bill, it's a joke, and every time they pass a joke, they make a joke, it turns out to be a law. I mean, you need somebody who's really taking the mickey out of Congress and embarrassing Congress through satire. This is absurd. This is absurd. So I said to Mitch McConnell or Chuck Schumer, what's in the bill? And they say, well, and you're going to vote on it? I mean, you have to be shameful. This is ridiculous. And this is one of the problems where the government is just wrong. It does too many things that it doesn't think about. This is ready, fire, aim, unfortunately.
This is a movement I can get behind. I really like your idea here. It's common sense. It's all American. Every side can agree.
It's even better, Cary. It's even better. We have to ask questions. Let me take the national security strategy that goes back to Obama, which Trump kept, and we don't know about Biden, but it's the same. Our strategy towards Russia and China and several others is to contain, deter, and if war comes, defeat, right?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Have we contained China or Russia? Have we deterred China or Russia? We didn't do a very good job in Ukraine. And if we're going to go to war to defeat them, what does it take to defeat a country with nuclear weapons and a population of 1.5 billion people? Come on, that's nuts. That's nuts. So you need to ask really tough questions about what we take as simple propositions. And we just don't do that. We just don't.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with the Senate, anybody up on the Hill, it's a full-time job raising money, and then you devote 2-3 minutes to going and voting on bills you don't read, and then you get back to cocktails and flying around to raise money because why not just admit you're bought and paid for? And people get that, and it's very upsetting. So I like this idea of holding them accountable. We just have to find a way to shame them publicly so that they suddenly discover what a great idea this is, and the bills become 13, 14 pages so that they can understand it. And,
or 100. But the point is, look, the majority of members of Congress are reputable, very decent people, but the process stinks. The process is broken. For example, you just become president. You're now President Harrison. You take office on January.
I don't want to be President Harrison.
No, wait.
Very naughty.
How long is it going to take you to fill the 3,000 slots in your administration so you have an up and running government? You're going to take over day one with a Secretary of State and a Secretary of Defense. And that's it. There's nobody home. The Biden administration, or it could have been the Trump administration or the Obama administration, 2 years into the administration, does not have a full house. That is insanity. So why can't we do things more smartly? It's not a revolutionary idea to be smart, but there are ways that we can do this. So any new administration that comes in and hasn't had a previous 4 years, it's going to take at least 1.5 years or 2 years to fill out that administration. That's no way to run a government, unfortunately. And it's easily correctable if we just use some common sense.
Well, I vote yes for that. And I'm just going to reintroduce you here as we come toward our finish line. We're talking right now with Dr. Harlan Ullman, former advisor to the Pentagon, foreign relations expert, author of the new book, The Fifth Horseman and the New Mad, How Massive Attacks Became the Looming Existential Danger to a Divided Nation and the World at Large. He's talking about going beyond traditional threats from states such as China and Russia and non-state actors employing violent extremism including domestically here, by the way. And can America's politics and our political system withstand all these different assaults of the fifth horseman and the new MAD? Help us remember what MAD is again. It used to be mutually assured destruction, but now it is
massive attacks of disruption, either man of nature or nature, which are attacking the vulnerabilities that are part of advanced societies, which we don't understand. Let me make a final point to give you a really interesting contradiction. I believe in a strong defense. I believe in having a great, ready military that can go to war and do what it needs to do. Having said that, over the past 60 years, one thing has happened. We have spent increasingly more amounts of money on defense because stuff is just more expensive because of technology. An F-35 fighter is a technological miracle. It costs $100 million a pop. An aircraft carrier, $15 billion. They're terrific. But one thing has happened. The more we spend, the more the Department of Defense shrinks. 60 years ago, we spent about $400 billion on defense, current dollars. We had a military of 3.2 million. Today, we're spending almost $800 billion, and our military is down to 1.3 million. Why? Because the costs have gone up so dramatically, and we have got to control these costs if we want to have a functioning military in the future, and nobody's been able to deal with it. More money, smaller forces.
Don't we also, Dr. Harlan Ullman, have something that the Romans could have only dreamt about? Alexander the Great could have only fantasized about. We've got, what, 600-700 military bases dotted around Earth, including Cuba. We're on every shore, every berg, every island, every beach, everywhere. We've got
that's not absolutely true. And having been to Guantanamo Bay, not as an inmate, but taking a ship through refresher training, I will tell you there are other places to be. It's not pleasant, and this is a long time ago. But look, one of the problems is with the defense budget, every member of Congress wants to have a base in his or her district, and that's a problem. And everybody admits the administration, going back to Nixon, wanted base closures, and that's terrific if they're going to close Harrison's base in wherever. But if they touch Ullman's base, I'm going to go to war. So we've got this military, industrial, political lobbying group that makes it very difficult to bring efficiencies. This is beyond the Pentagon. What has happened to the Pentagon is not their fault. They are playing under a rule book that could only have been devised by the KGB and the Soviet Union because it is so stupid and irrational that no sane, and I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. The defense regulations are insane, and they've been just getting worse, because nobody wants to have corruption. Nobody wants to have all this kind of stuff. So it takes us 25 years to build something. We started designing USS Ford, the carrier, in 1995. That was before you were born. And she's just operational. We can do better. But what we have to do is to take this thing apart and say, look, this makes no sense. We've got to fix it. But there are so many forces of inertia that make it very difficult. If you let the military, with proper civilian control, change things, we could do a lot better. But the system does not allow it to work that way, unfortunately. And the White House is always a problem, because the White House is going to say, well, let's keep this because it's important for the election, et cetera, et cetera. That's democracy. I understand that. We need to be more efficient.
All right. We're talking right now to Dr. Harlan Ullman, former advisor to the Pentagon foreign relations expert, author of the new book, The Fifth Horseman and the New MAD, How Massive Attacks Became the Looming Existential Danger to a Divided Nation and the World at Large. Plus, we're throwing in for a $150 pledge to KPFK at 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, or you can go to kpfk.org, throwing in a webinar where he's going to lay this all out visually for many of us who like to actually see it and hear it at the same time, besides read it. You could take this book, you can pass it along as education to your kids or grandkids who will not be given access to any of this in the schools in which they currently find themselves hoteled and disciplined, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm talking about. You get it. This is the kind of stuff that nobody can ever take away from you. And I'm going to ask you, Dr. Harlan Ullman, a nod for independent public radio. Why is this important, particularly right now?
We need to have the truth. We need to have objectivity. And unfortunately, the media is a business. Television stations are in the process of making money. Newspapers are making money. Go back to the 60s when you used to have an hour of news. You had Cronkite, you had Huntley Brinkley. Now you have news that's 30 minutes, and half of the news are these human interest programs about the gorilla who's riding an elephant down Wall Street. I mean, who cares? Where do you get good news and good objectivity and good discussion? You can get it on PBS and some of the Sunday morning talk shows. But most of the news hours during prime time are there to sell advertisements. In the old days, the foreign policy and news bureaus were loss leaders because people said we have to be able to get we have to get news. And so you had hour-long programs. That's changed, and it's unfortunate. And then have the internet, which is so polluted with nonsense that people see it and they agree to it. And so that requires greater education and greater knowledge. And we need to have, as you have all sorts of teaching about hygiene, there needs to be internet hygiene for kids when they start school at early
Yes.
grade, because
And a
it's
little
so
less.
dangerous. And we need to do that. We teach kids hygiene, physical hygiene, so they don't come across diseases and so forth. We need to do that with the internet because it is terribly dangerous for young. And I'm not talking about restrictions. I'm not talking about censorship. I'm just talking about common sense. And kids who are smart enough to use this when they're 2 years old are smart enough to understand that there are dangers here and they can be taught appropriately how to deal with them.
Well said. And inversely, we need to not have too much hygiene when it comes to knowledge and just cherry pick and pare it down to a small nubbin. And as long as you can punch a time clock, you're educated. Wrong. My grandmother, who grew up on a farm in Iowa, studied Greek. So please don't tell me this is impossible.
And
We're
Cary,
going
by
to
the
end
way,
the show.
one
Go
last
ahead,
point.
quickly. We got
You said
a
Iowa.
minute and a
You
half.
said Iowa. If you go back and take a look at the grade school, 8th grade examination test that you had to pass, they're probably the equivalent of college tests today.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
In the 20s and 30s, it's staggering. Go back and just take a look at whatever the state exams were that you had to take for 8th
And
grade.
that's why KPFK is your scholastic access right here, right now, live, right in your eardrums, right in your ear holes and your eyeballs. We are massaging your brain and massaging all of your senses with truth and reality. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, $150 pledge. You get Dr. Ullman's book. You get it. It's called The Fifth Horseman and the New Mad, How Massive Attacks Became the Looming Existential Danger to a Divided Nation and the World at Large. When you have this book, you will be able to teach yourself. You will be able to augur the future because you will understand the interconnections of everything. Plus, you get a free ticket to the webinar. The webinar that's upcoming, when we get your email, we will send you the invitation for that. You can enjoy that. Watch it again and again. $150 pledge. Save your life, save the life of your friends, save your sanity, and help us force Congress to read the bills, et cetera, et cetera. I see a brand new movement being born, and you're all ear witnesses to that today here on Harrison's Reality Check. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. I'm going to ask my friend Ken, 22, stick his head in the face. There it is. There it is. See, he's here learning because there's a whole generation of people that want to know, that want to do better. And a book like The Fifth Horseman and the New Mad, How Massive Attacks Became the Looming Existential Danger, say that 10 times fast, to a divided nation and a world at large is your way into the future, plus the webinar. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-KPFK. You can also go to kpfk.org, 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 or dial now 818-985-5735. $150 pledge saves KPFK and upgrades your brain, the dendrites, the synapses, firing beautifully as the left and right hemisphere of that glob of goo in between your ears turns back into a mighty set of scrotum-like capaciousness. Cary Harrison with you. Look at his expression. Thank you, Dr. Ullman, for joining us today. All right. I'll see y'all next week.
If you don't already know about it, it's really time to discover KPFK. KPFK is community radio.